Welcome to How to Become a Production SQL Database Administrator. My name is Raphael. So far, what we've done at this point is created a virtual machine, and we called it DC. And then we promoted that virtual machine to what's called a domain controller and assigned a static IP address to the network card using 50. And then we created a domain, and this is how far we've got. In the next couple of videos or several videos, what I'm going to do is create 3 more virtual machines, and we're going to call the first virtual machine Server1, the second one Server2, the third one Server3. And then obviously I'm going to assign static IP addresses 51, 52, and 53. And then obviously we're going to join the domain SQL, and then finally I'm going to be installing SQL 2016 or 14, depending on my whim at that point, on each of these virtual machines. So what we'll have is 4 virtual machines, 1 the DC, and 3 separate virtual machines that we need for HA solutions, and then we can begin. So at the end, what will graphically look like is this, where we'll have a domain controller under a SQL domain, and then we'll have 3 separate standalone servers, and then join the domain with these IP addresses and SQL servers. So that's what we're aiming for at this point. So let me minimize this. So where are we stand right now? So at this point, as you know, we've created a virtual machine and called it DC for domain controller. And this is a static IP address that's been assigned to it, and it's sql.com domain. So what we need to do now is create 3 separate virtual machines, calling it Server1, Server2, and Server3. So one thing important to note is that when we're creating the virtual machines, you need to make sure that the domain controller is powered on. So that's very important, otherwise you can't join the domain and you'll get some errors. So now what we need to do now is create a first virtual machine. So go to your icon, virtual VMware workstation, and open it up. And one thing you'll notice here now is, let me look at this here, this which I'll be providing for you. We've already gone through the checklist of creating a domain controller. So what we're going to do now is create a checklist for Server1, Server2, and Server3. You'll notice that all these directions and procedures are exactly the same for Server1, Server2, and Server3. The only difference is the IP address. This is going to be 51, because that's the next incremental number, and then this is going to be 52, and this is going to be 53. Otherwise, I'm going to do this one by one. I'm going to actually start with Server1. I'm going to go through the whole process of creating a Server1, then installing SQL 2014 on it, and then I'm going to repeat the entire process for Server2 and install 2014, and then I'm going to do this process again for Server3 and install SQL 2014. The reason I'm doing it individually is because some students had difficulty in understanding how to obtain IP addresses and how to assign them. So it's going to be a little more redundant, but at least you'll get a better understanding of how this works. And as we progress and move on to a little higher functioning of clustering, this will become very important to understand. So learning it here will benefit us in the long run. So the first thing we need to do is create a virtual machine called Server1, and then follow these procedures step by step. So let's do that. So as I said, make sure the server is on, which it is, and let's create a virtual machine. Now, in this process, I'm going to be a little faster and not explaining the creation of virtual machine because I've already done it with this. It's going to be virtually identical to the steps that we took in creating the domain controller. The only difference obviously is going to be the static IP address assignment, and obviously we're not going to promote it to a DC, but other than that, it's going to be virtually the identical steps. So let's begin. So click on New Virtual Machine, and it's going to look for my operating system, which it did. So go Next. Go Next, go Yes, and obviously change it to Server1, and go Next, and go Next, and go Next. And as soon as this installation of the Windows operating system starts, I'm going to pause the video and then come back, and then we'll follow these procedures to make sure that we can abide by these and redo these for everyone. So once this completes, we'll follow this, and then I'm going to repeat, as I said, the whole process, doing it twice for second server and third server, so you get a good understanding of it, and it never hurts to repeat. So let's see where we are right now. And as soon as this starts to download, I'll pause the video, and then we'll resume when this installation is complete. I think you'll get a great benefit of it. I had previously installed the Windows domain server and installed Server1 and Server2 for you to save time, and then I went over Server3, and I realized that maybe it'll confuse some students if they didn't know how to do Server1 and Server2, even though it's identical. So I thought this would be a little more beneficial to my students. So it's stalling now, so when this finishes, I'll resume, and we'll come back and pick it up, and I'll see you in a second. And welcome back, and as you can see, the on Server1, Windows 2012 operating system has been installed, and obviously we've got this server management pop up. So what do we need to do next? So let's look at our documentation, which will direct us. So we need to change the network adapter to bridge and disable the firewall. So let's do that. So change network adapter. How do we do that? The way we do that is go to the player here, go to Manage, Virtual Machine Setting, and then go Network, and then click on Bridged, and go OK. Then the next thing we wanted to do was disable Windows Firewall. So the way to do that is, let's just close this. On your keyboard, press the Windows key, go to Control Panel, go to Category Small, and then you'll see Windows Firewall. Double click that, and we need to turn this off. So turn off Firewall, and turn it off, and turn it off, and go OK. And that's done also. So what is the next thing we need to do? The next thing we need to do is enter the IP address 192.168.51 to the network card. Now remember, 50 was the domain controller, so the next sequential number for our IP address is 51, and then 52 and 53 and so on. So we're going to change this, enter the IP address. So let's go back to our thing. One thing I'll note is I've provided this screenshot for you for each server. So for this server, this is what you'll need to fill out eventually. So that'll make your life easier for you. But remember, your IP address depends on your internet provider. If I go to network here, you'll notice here I typed in cox.com, which is the internet provider that I have. And obviously this is a page that allows you to look at your router and so on. And then it says on your computer, open the web browser, and in the address bar, enter one of these followings. So mine is 01. Mine is 192.168.0.1. It could be this, yours, so you may want to try any of these. And as I said, if your router does not fall in one of these categories, then if none of these addresses work, we recommend you check with the owner's manual or call your internet company, and they'll provide you with your router number, default number. So as I said, mine is this right here. So that's how you get it. So let's continue. So disable that IP address. So let's go back to our server, and we're going to change the IP address, and we're on Server1. So I want you to go to this little icon here, right click, open Network and Sharing Center, go to Change Adapter, double click, go to Properties, and then on this one, on version 4, click Properties. And now we're going to assign what's called a static IP address. And remember what static IP address is. It's the distinct IP address for this very computer. So what is it? So right here, 192.168. So 192.168.0.51. Is that the case? Let's just double check. 192.168 what? And then on your subnet, just click it and it'll populate automatically. Then the default gateway, which is your router number, as I've been mentioning, is 1. So this is going to be 192.168.0.1. And then for the preferred right here, So it's 192. This is going to go back to the original 50 is the original domain controller. So let's repoint it to there. So go 192.168.0.50. And then the alternative DNS is 127.0.0.1. And that's it. So that looks exactly like this, I believe. 168, just double check, because this is important. So I'm go OK and close and close. And now I believe, let's look, we may have to restart the VM, which we do, so it can take that stack ID. So go player, power, restart guest, and yes. So the great benefit is that initially we may have to be hesitant as to understanding how we're doing it. But by the time you do it the third time, which we will, it'll become second nature to you of what IP addressing is and how to set these configurations. So we're going to repeat this entire process that we went through for server 2 and then server 3. So it's better to understand it this way by repetition.